the French think that they, and I'm sure they have got a special relationship, could offend Emmanuel Macron, but it's Boris won, and that one, we'll look at that later in the hour. Don't screw it up is the snappy headline of the Metro. This is the warning from a member of the government's task force saying that as the vaccines come in, get it right, he's telling the government, and life will return to normal by Easter. Dear God, surely a little bit ahead of that. The Sun newspapers, actually I'll give you that list in a moment, they have a picture of Boris Johnson mocked up as the Will Ferrell character in Elf, and the headline is Good Elf, and there he is holding a giant syringe. Not quite sure that works actually. And with all this going on, the Daily Mirror decides not to have any of it on the front page, which is not cool. They tell us that drug dealers are working in care homes to recruit kids, which I'm not saying is not a story, it is, but I don't know if it's quite of that magnitude. Come to your calls in just a moment. Rich will be talking to you about the vaccine, but we've got someone hanging on about a story I've mentioned a couple of times, which is a very disturbing story concerning the Roman Catholic Church and the final review of the Church, the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse at the Vatican's, and this is the Vatican, so it tracks to the Pope now, failure to cooperate with the investigation passes understanding. It's a 162-page report. It talks of the Church's neglect of the physical, emotional and spiritual well-being of children and young people in favour of protecting the Church's image. Responding, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, Archbishop of Westminster, which is leader of the Catholic Church in England, Wales, said this yesterday.
The point today is for me to say, look, I am sorry, I am ashamed, but we will keep working away. We will learn from our shame and our mistakes, and we will work to make our responses more sympathetic, to make our systems more coherent, to make our inquiries more thorough, and to make, as we have done for the last years, have a very strong and robust relationship with public authorities.
For David Enright, who's a solicitor with the firm Howe & Co. They acted for 20 of the victims of this inquiry, and he joins me now. Sorry to put it so brutally, Mr. Enright, do you think that the Cardinal has the moral authority to talk now on this? Good morning.
Good morning. It's lovely to speak to you again. No, he doesn't. Cardinal Nichols has been at the helm of the Church at all material times over the last 20 years. He has failed profoundly and repeatedly, and he must go. Now, the first thing is that this report is not an attack on the Catholic faith or the millions of Catholics who go to church every Sunday to make donations of money and food for the needy here and abroad. It is a devastating critique of the Church's fossilized hierarchy here and in Rome, who put the reputation of the Church before the safety of children.
Do we need an independent body over all churches, because we need to say that other faiths sadly have had their dark days, that can review and monitor these sort of affairs, Mr. Enright?
Exactly. That's exactly what my clients have been saying to me. That's
like an Ofcom sort of affair, something like that.
Just like solicitors, barristers, doctors, accountants are all regulated by external independent bodies, that the safeguarding of children should be put in the hands of independent lay professionals who are accountable and transparent. It can't be in the hands of ancient bishops who have no understanding of these matters and whose first loyalties lie to their priests.
You're far closer to the victims than I am. What do the words that the Cardinal say yesterday, does it mean anything to them, or do they seem rather empty without putting words in your mouth?
Well, I mean, one of my clients, a very brave man called Jim, went on Sky News yesterday and spoke about his experiences and the experiences of 12 other men I represent who were abused as children in a Catholic junior seminary in Yorkshire. And they have said to me, and I'll quote the words from Jerry McLaughlin, "We were as young as 11 years of age when the Catholic Cambodian missionaries abused us at a seminary in Yorkshire. This report has been a long time in coming. It's crucial now that both the Catholic Church and the government implement these recommendations." Enough is enough, Jim. There are mums and dads, thousands of them, listening to your show now, getting their children ready to go to St. Joseph's and St. Mary's. They are shaking their heads and asking themselves, when will the Church finally get a grip on this?
David Enright, thank you for your time. You're with the solicitor with the firm Howe & Co. You've acted for 20 of the victims of this inquiry, 728 quarters, but relatively robust, and it's the most vulnerable that we test effectively as guinea pigs. Rich, thank you. We must move on because we're going to be late to the news. Coming up after the news, I will give you the list. 67 areas in England where, if you're listening, you could get one of these 15-minute tests. Stay tuned. I'll run through the list. Also later in the show, red card for this football oaf.
If I look at what happens to high-profile coloured footballers, social media is a free-for-all, and if they don't like black people, they will abuse you anonymously online.
Greg Jurassic Clark, as the Daily Mail have christened him. Plus, but sadly they're not, as Coca-Cola decides it's going to park those trucks for the first time ever due to COVID. Details after the news. 7:30, this is Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC. News Time, Simon Conway.
The government's come up with a plan to allow university students in England to go home to their families for Christmas. There'll be a 7-day travel window in the week after the national lockdown has ended, and ministers hope to offer COVID tests to as many students as possible. Senior Conservative backbenchers have formed a group to resist any extension to the England-wide lockdown. The Tory MPs say the government must find a more sustainable way for people to lead their lives until a vaccine is rolled out. The Football Association is beginning its search for a new chairman following the resignation of Greg Clark. He apologised over the language he used to describe black and gay footballers during an appearance before MPs. And the weather, eastern and some central parts will be dry and bright after early fog clears, but becoming wet and windy for many, with rain in the west moving eastwards, a high of 14 degrees.
This is LBC. It's been a tough time for UK businesses. Luckily, mine's doing pretty well. Looking at the finances, the numbers tell a story. It's easy to see with zero accountant software. I can see the money coming in, going out, and everything like that. Also, my accountant can log in at any time to do her work. Zero really does help us businesses. Right now, they've even given me a chance on the radio. Hi, I'm John Stone from Stone Tyres and Gorilla Tyres in St Helens, Merseyside.
Manage your accounts easily with Xero. Visit xero.com.
I wash my hands to protect my family.
I wear a face covering to protect my mates.
I make space to protect my colleagues. Hands.
Face.
Space.
I wash my hands to protect strangers.
I wear a face covering to protect other passengers.
I make space to protect you. Hands.
Face.
Space. As we spend more time indoors, we need to do whatever we can to help protect each other from coronavirus. So please, wash hands, cover face, make space.
The Masters is back. For the first time ever in autumn. We are in uncharted territory here. Watch all 4 days live, only on Sky Sports Golf for just £10.